and welcome everyone to a series on leading from success to significance. I'm delighted to introduce you today a really dear friend and brilliant leader in her own right, who is Nory Angel. She's a leader of American Leadership Forum. She's the president, and this is an organization which I came to know through one of my Vistage members who had been in ALF. And I have just come to appreciate so much the work in developing leaders and in helping leaders further grow that this organization does, and the heart that Nory brings to all of the work she does. So I'm so delighted, Nory. Thank you so much for joining me for a conversation about leadership from success to significance.
Well, thank you, Daphne. I'm so happy to be here with you and have a chance to talk leadership with you.
Yeah. So, just so many questions I could ask, and we only have a few minutes, but what I'd love to do also is make sure that it's possible for people to reach out to the both of us after this conversation, and we'll make sure that information is posted and available. So first question. So I mentioned American Leadership Forum. Can you tell me, can you give us a brief overview of what is ALF and what are its core missions and core values and objectives?
ALF is a nonprofit organization that centers on joining and strengthening diverse leaders to serve the common good. And the way that ALF does that is through a year-long executive leadership program that really centers on what we call the inner leader, who we are in this world, how we lead, how we build community. And on top of that, it takes us through a year-long process that with a select group of leaders in a cohort that includes not just the technical training of leadership, but also includes going to Colorado for a week, climbing a mountain together, spending time in nature, spending time in dialogue to really go deeper on some of these life questions that we're all grappling with. The best part is you get to do it in community with a trusted group of leaders.
Okay, thank you. So can you tell me a little bit about the key programs and initiatives that ALF runs? You mentioned there's a year-long program. I think you may be adding some other really incredible pieces.
Yeah, so after 41 years of serving the community through a leadership program, we are really, really excited to have just moved into our new leadership hub here at the Amegy Bank building in downtown Houston. This space is a convening space available to the community where we can convene around topics that maybe are top of mind for us, where we can convene people who can be in closer relationship to each other so that together they can collaborate and work on the things that are pressing to our region. And more importantly, it's a space for leaders to come together and build community.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
So that's an example of the new programming we're offering to the larger community. And historically, ALF has been very inward looking in terms of if you are part of our alumni network, you have access to our resources. Now we're going to be looking out into the world after 41 years of doing this type of work. We have a network of 1,700 leaders throughout the region and 5,000 throughout the country that have undergone the ALF experience either through Houston or our other chapters. And so we're ready to really look out into the world and think about how do we build the leadership capacity throughout the region, not just with our own members, but really throughout the region.
So, Nory, what would you say in your sort of observing how things have changed over the many years that you've been leading this organization? What would you say that you see are the biggest challenges for leaders today, and how does ALF help to address either emerging leaders or seasoned leaders? Because I imagine there's a whole gamut of people that come through these doors to gain and grow.
I see a lot of grappling with the complexity of the challenges that we're facing as a society right now, as a region, and really as a world. We know there's a lot of messages to us all to are divisive, that are polarizing. And so it is harder now, I think, to feel like you are in community or to really connect deeply with people that maybe are not part of your normal, sphere of influence, people you don't necessarily cross paths with. And so I think ALF gives people not just a safe space, but a brave space where they can really
Mhm.
show up as their best selves in community with other leaders who care about community, who want to be
Mhm.
better leaders. And what I like to say is want to be better humans. This is a time, and we're living in a time that requires learning. It requires doing that in community with others. And it requires a lot more experimentation with possibility, not certainty, not answers, because I don't think any of us have the answers right now. What we can have is really that learner mindset and curiosity about better understanding our complex issues and getting clarity about what do we need to learn. Right now is time for us to be in learning mode and experimentation mode.
Yeah, thank you. Um, so what would you say is unique about ALF's approach to leadership development, and who are the types of people that are part of ALF?
ALF goes beyond a technical training program or a technical leadership program. I mean, we have a technical component to it. We really rely heavily on the adaptive leadership framework from Harvard. Ron Heifetz, Martin Linsky, very well known, very powerful framework. And we go deeper than that and really look at what we call the inner leader. And that requires slowing down, that requires reflection, that requires a different mindset that is not typical in this fast-paced world in which we live in. So I think
Mhm.
ALF is very unique that it brings the nature element into the program. It brings the mindfulness practice into the program. And lastly, and maybe more important, as importantly, is that it brings community of leaders who are working alongside you, are supporting you as a leader, are serving as a sounding board, and helping you to really see your leadership challenges from multiple perspectives.
Oh. So speaking of the community of leaders, what sorts of people join and become ultimately ALF fellows?
Many of our senior fellows are serving in executive leadership roles throughout the region, whether it's in the for-profit sector or the nonprofit sector, government. I'll give you some examples. We have the head of the Amity Bank, Steve Stevens, is a senior fellow. We have the mayor of Houston is a senior fellow, Mayor Turner. And we have community leaders, people who are out in the world doing the work of leading. We see leadership as a practice and an activity, not just a leader in terms of a noun or what position you serve in. I think they're all important. And I think right now in the world that we're living in, we have to move from a place of someone that's in a role of authority to someone who's in a role that is activated and doing the work of leading out in the world, regardless of position. So that gives
Mhm.
you a little bit broad scope look at who's in our program. But the common denominator is that these are folks that are out in the world actively leading and leading in a way that we call they're servant leaders. They care
Mhm.
deeply about community, and they're very, one of the key values and core values is they're relational. They believe in relationships, they invest in relationships, and that is how they practice their leadership throughout the region.
Okay. Okay. Um, so speaking about relationships, how do ALF fellows continue their relationships once once they have become senior fellows, once they've completed that year? How do they continue that fellowship? What's next for them, and how do they stay? How do you help them stay in community with each other?
The beautiful thing about ALF is that people have a whole year together to really get to know each other. We practice this thing called the 7-minute story. So every single one of our classes start with the 7-minute story, and we really get to know who the person is beyond position, beyond what's on a resume. And that is what starts to really bond the group. So by the
Mm-hmm.
time the class finishes the year, they're very interconnected. What we are excited about moving forward is that we are launching a stronger alumni program to really help not just connect the classes, but connect throughout the network. There are several
Mm-hmm.
things that are coming down the pipeline in 2024, including an online community where senior fellows can connect throughout the country and share resources and collaborate and really get to know who's in the region, or not just the region, but throughout the country. Another thing that we're excited about is our senior fellow programming, what we're calling the ALF ecosystem. So moving forward, we want to be part of developing leaders, not just when they're in the program, but throughout their lifelong leadership journey. We want to help our senior fellows connect, not just in their classes, but throughout the entire network that spans every state. And lastly, and most, I think what is really the new frontier for us is we want to activate more collaborative, collective leadership in service to what we call the common good.
Okay. So much passion comes through in what you talk about. Um, can we just step back a minute? Can I just ask you, Nory, like what drives you? What is it for you that makes this such a cause?
So that is a complex question in some ways, because I think it started probably before I even came into consciousness, and that my parents are immigrants from Latin America. And my mother came here as a young woman, undocumented, and did what she needed to do to not only survive, but take care of me and invest in my education and everything that takes to create a human that's functioning and productive on this planet. So I owe a lot to my ancestors and to my heritage as a Hispanic Latina here in the U.S. In terms of my work, I am fortunate to have spent most of my education in Catholic school, which really instilled in me a connection to community and this idea of being in service to my
Mm-hmm.
fellow man. And so
Mm-hmm.
my whole career has been dedicated to nonprofit management, to working in the community at a couple of organizations here in Houston, which really brought me in close proximity to the people that we serve out in the world
Mm-hmm.
as a nonprofit, in the organization I was leading. And ultimately, what brought me to ALF was this idea or real clarity that after working in the community for 20 years, I kind of realized that nonprofit community work, grassroots work, was the work of 1+1, one more family, one more job placement. And I wanted to have a deeper impact. And that clarity came that if I could work with leaders and help them to really expand their consciousness as leaders and expand their own, sense of solidarity with the people out in the world that could use the support, that would
Mm-hmm.
be an exponential impact. And once I got that clarity, I got a phone call from ALF, and here I am 3 years later.
Yeah. Wow. 3
So
big years later.
they go by fast. They were pandemic years, so I say they count for like 7 years each.
For sure, for sure. And the amount accomplished and the direction, it's really fantastic to watch and so exciting to see this next sort of chapter of ALF spring into being and grow strong. So we talked a little bit about these new programs and so forth. What would you say are the future goals for ALF specific to the Gulf Coast, or just in general, ALF future goals, and where you'd like to see this organization be, the change that you see is possible with this organization, how this organization can affect not just the few fellows necessarily, or the many fellows and senior fellows, but the community, the larger community, our larger world community. What are you seeing? can be the impact? What's out there for us?
For ALF, our big hope, our moonshot here is to become the place where we bring people together across difference, to create space where there is more belonging and more connection and more possibility, especially in a time where it's sad to say the most radical thing we can do is to get in the room with someone who doesn't think like us, who doesn't love like us, who doesn't practice their faith like we do. We need to really honor difference right now and create space for it. And so this is what our leadership hub means for the region, what we want it to be. We talk about ALF and our new hub being Houston's living room, a space where we can come together across difference and really dialogue and honor each other's humanity. I don't think we can solve these complex issues if we are not in relationship to each other, if we're not in proximity to each other. And so I hope, and our board hopes, that this is what ALF becomes to the region as we move forward into the next 40 years of our organization.
Oh yeah, yeah. Well, thank you, Nory. This has been such an inspiring opportunity to get to. First of all, I love spending time with you because every time I'm with you, I feel sort of richer for just the space of everything you said, community and passion and really deep connection, providing a space to grow from whatever success means to really some significance in the world. And I know we can all only move at the speed of trust. And I know that's something that ALF really fosters from the very beginning. And I see that as something that I'm very fortunate that we share so much in common. So it just out of curiosity, if people are interested in knowing more about American Leadership Forum, about potentially becoming a fellow and ultimately a senior fellow, what are the processes for that, or what would you suggest that people do?
I invite people to look at our website, which is www.alfhouston.org, and keep an eye out on community convenings. Everyone is welcome to join any of our community convenings and future workshops that we offer as well to the community. In terms of our fellows program, it is nomination, but I invite people to look at the fellows program, and if there is an interest in being nominated, to reach out to a senior fellow and talk to them about the possibility of nominating them for ALF.
Okay, well, thank you so much, Nory. Again, I really appreciate the inspiration. I think there's so much overlap between what you and I get to be so lucky to do every day and the amazing people we get to spend time with who inspire us. So I appreciate everything that you do in the space of ALF, and I look forward to continuing our dialogue together and supporting each other. And thank you all to everyone who's been able to join us today. Appreciate you guys being here. If you are interested in knowing more about me and the work that I do as a Vistage chair, and which is in some ways an extension of what Nory and her group does, meeting monthly to work on the serious issues and the amazing opportunities that we have as leaders and to grow our companies and our organizations and support each other. I'm happy to have that conversation. What I'm looking for really specifically is people who are high integrity leaders, who care about lifting others up, who have been successful and who have a lot more to give and grow. So it's been a pleasure. Thank you all so much. And Nory, again, thank you. I look forward to seeing you and all of you again soon.
Thank you, Daphne.